Hey everyone, this is Rachel. Thanks for clicking on the video, and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. I wanted to come in and talk about this new book of Bobby Brown's that was just released last week. It's called Every Little Step, and this book is a biography of his life. Um, I have mixed feelings about the book. I must say that I didn't read it yet, but just reading all the things that he's going to put in his book, it just made me pause for a little bit. So let's just get started. So this book is going to start about age 14 or so for Bobby Brown. In the book, he talks about getting into trouble and being thrown in jail when he was 14 years old. He says that they put him in a women's jail instead of a men's to protect him. They thought if he was in women's jail that he wouldn't encounter as many problems as he did if he was in jail with men. In his book, he talks about meeting a 21-year-old girl that was a friend of a friend's and them sneaking off to a corner of the jail to have sex. Um, he goes on to discuss his rise to fame, with the group New Edition, the background on that. And then as the book progresses, he talks about the many relationships that he had, the problems that he had with drugs, and of course his marriage to Whitney Houston. Now, I wish Bobby Brown all the luck in the world with his book. And I think because of the things that are included in the book, the people that he talks about, I think the book is going to be a bestseller. I really do. Um, Now, where I have a problem with it is if this is his life story, then I wanted him to stick to his life and not drag anyone that's no longer here to, you know, clap back at some of the accusations that he's made. So he discusses in his book having relationships with quite a few prominent singers that were on the top of the charts when he was hot. He talks about a relationship with Madonna. He says that they got together in a bathroom in a recording studio. Basically, Bobby says that Madonna was a little too wild. He says that she was a little bit too much even for him. He goes on to talk about a relationship that he had with Janet Jackson. He says that he had had a crush on her from, when she was Penny on Good Times, and he says that it goes that far back. Well, according to him, they got together, and he says that they had sex. He said that he was really feeling her, he really liked her, and he knew that she liked him. But he says, that she told him that her father would not allow her to date a black guy. So that's when, they were in the hotel after being together. That's when we hear this story about him throwing her out of the hotel room. Um, then the book goes on to, talk about when he left New Edition. He says that when he left New Edition that he was broke and he was forced to sell drugs to support his family. Bobby Brown has a lot of children and he probably had a lot of child support that he had to pay for these different baby mamas that he had. He says that, at that time, he came out with his new album. And once that album started to, really shoot up the charts, he was back hot again. He says that during that time that, he was making Every Little Step and all of that, the songs that we know that were really, really big time sellers for Bobby Brown, he says that during that time, he just took advantage of everything that a young male celebrity would get into. Women, women, and more women. He's going to talk about all the sexual encounters he had and just the excesses that he, went through during that time when he was really hot on the charts. Um, and it's going to be interesting, that part, because we know back in the day Bobby Brown could be something else. Some of his stage shows, they were banned. I even think I remember once a stage show that he had down south where they warned him that if he got a little too raunchy, they were going to shut it down. And I believe that they shut down his show because Bobby Brown started taking his clothes off. He was, doing sexual acts on stage, just simulating them. He didn't actually take off his pants and get down. And I guess bringing girls about the audience, teenage girls, and it was frowned on because they believed that the his stage show was too much for teenagers. Um, and he's going to discuss all of that in his book. Then he moves on to his relationship with Whitney Houston. He says that when they first got together, he was 23 years old, and I believe Whitney was quite a few years older than him. I'm believing it was 7 or 8, and it may have been even more. He says that before they got married, Whitney told him to go out and sow his wild oats and get all the fucking around out of his system before he married her. And he said that's exactly what he did. He was a young man. He was hot on the charts. And like he said in the interview, he had money. He was young. And he was doing what a young man should do. Just being out, having fun, meeting all kinds of girls, and just enjoying his life. And he said that basically prior to him and Whitney getting married, Whitney told him, do your thing, but once you get married, it's over. So then the book is going to progress to his marriage to Whitney Houston. Now this is where I start to have a little problem with the book. And again, I am rooting for Bobby Brown. I am not saying anything that is negative concerning, his life prior to Whitney Houston, nor his life when he married her. But the things that he lets out about Whitney Houston and, things that went on with them, I think he could have done it a different way. So starting off with Whitney Houston, he alleges in his book, and we know that this has always been rumored, that Whitney and her best friend Robin had a lesbian relationship. Now that's nothing new to us. We've all heard that. But he goes on to say that Whitney Houston had several female relationships, and she kept it undercover because of her family and their religious background. And he didn't want to up this. He says that Whitney did not want to, upset her family, so she kept all that to it. Now he goes on to say that, Whitney was a lesbian. No, he says Whitney was not a lesbian. He said Whitney was bisexual. He said the reason why he knows that she was is because he was married to her for all those years, and there were things that he saw that he knows that she was bisexual. He said that Whitney did enjoy being with women, but she loved him too, and that she enjoyed being with men. So that's why he gives her the label of bisexual, not a lesbian. He goes on to say that Whitney had several affairs on him after they were married. He says that One of those relationships was with Tupac. And, you know, he talks about in the book, I guess what happened, how he found out, and other things that were occurring in their marriage that were negative. There's even talk of um, dope usage with Whitney, Bobby Christina, and Bobby Brown. Um, in the book, there are going to be excerpts from family members, and they speak on some of the things that they saw during the time that Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown were married. One of the things that they talk about is Bobby Brown's daughter, LaPrincia. She talks about a time when she was in a limo with Whitney, Bobby, and Bobby Christina. And she says in his book that they were all smoking weed together. Now, I think things like that could have been left out. And the reason why I say that is because there was a way to do that. Now, because Whitney Houston was a big part of his life, I don't say that he should have left her out of his book, because that would be crazy. That was his wife. They were married for, I think, like 16 years, 14, 15, 16 years. So she was a big part of his life. But the part that I have a problem with is he could have said, we did drugs together, we did this together, we cheated on each other, we did this, that, and the other. I think that this going into detail was a bit too much. I think that because Whitney and Bobby Christina are gone now, and there is no way for them to do, refute anything that he has in his book, I think that certain parts should have been left out. And the reason why I say that is because Bobby Brown could have done this in a way where he touched on the bad things, the really, really terrible things that the public didn't know, because it is his right to tell his story. Now, I'm not taking that from him. He lived it, he was married to her, and it is his right to tell that story because, that again was a big part of his life. But I don't like the getting into the details of it. He could say just simply, Whitney cheated on me. Simply that Whitney, you know, he could have even said like he thought she might have been bisexual. I don't know. That part kind of rubs me the wrong way, and maybe it's because I want this all to have a happy ending. I want them to put this feud to rest, and I truly believe that when this book comes out, that it is going to really broaden that war between the Browns and the Houstons, because her mother is going to be very upset. Now, I know when I made my last video, a lot of people were in the comments saying that Whitney Houston's mother excuse me, did not want to accept the fact that Whitney was flawed. And I kind of am in agreement with that. But what I say to that in defense of Cissy Houston is that was her baby. That was the child that she gave birth to. And you know how when someone in your family dies, a beloved person, and maybe in life that person was something else, they were the family member that cussed out Aunt this and did this to Cousin John, and didn't take care of her kids or whatever. But when the person dies, you only remember the good things about them. As the time passes from the time they actually die, you start to kind of sugarcoat the life they led. You don't want to remember the bad things about them. You only want to remember the good things. And I think maybe that's what's going on with Whitney's mother. The loss of her only daughter is probably too much for her, and she's still mourning. And maybe this, all of these revelations about Whitney are too much for her. And as a parent myself, I don't think that Whitney's mother wasn't aware of some of these things that Bobby is saying. She did that interview with Oprah, and Oprah asked her if she had known that Whitney was either a lesbian or bisexual, would she have accepted it? And the mother said no, absolutely not, because that's not how she was raised. Now, I just say to that, you know, I'm a mother that would accept my child any way they came. So I didn't understand that, but I also looked at that Whitney's mother came from another generation. Whitney's mother should be late 70s, early 80s, and that's a different generation, and they were not as forgiving of things like that. Also, Whitney's mother is very, very, into church. I think she's kept Whitney in church all of her life, and I think Whitney's mother still, goes to that church and directs that choir. So I believe for her, this is going to be too much. And I'm not taking up for her, but I'm sympathizing with her mother because she doesn't want to remember the bad things about her daughter. Her daughter is gone now. And no matter what anyone says, the fact remains that Whitney is dead. She can't defend herself. She can't dispute anything that he says. And I just think, as a man that once loved her, because I don't care what people, let me just rephrase what I'm going to say. I don't care what people say about Whitney and Bobby. I truly believe that those two people loved each other. No matter what, people thought about them being together. I was young when they were young. I am basically around the same age as them. So as I was growing up, I watched their love, their marriage and all that. And one thing, those two people truly, truly loved each other. So with that, I just wonder why Bobby is going that deep in to, some of the really, really personal things, like, them, just cheating on each other, and, the sexual things that they did with other people, and their, I guess, Whitney's bisexual, activity. I don't know. I just think that it's a bit much. But again, I can't take away that this is his story. That's why I started the video off and saying that I'm torn, because I truly believe Bobby Brown has the right to tell his story. But then on the other hand, it kind of embarrasses me for Whitney. Do you guys kind of get what I'm saying? I'm very torn. And I was one of those people that, I really didn't like Bobby Brown because I thought all the rumors were true, that, and then as time went on, you started to see that Whitney had problems. So though I still am not 100% on board with him at this point, because I think after Whitney died, that relationship with Bobby Christina could have been a little better. But I do understand that there were people on Bobby Christina's side that were doing everything that they could to keep her from her father. And I don't care what he was or was not, he was still her father. I'm one of those people that believe that let that child see the father. If he's full of shit, they will eventually realize that themselves. But it is their right to see that father, to have a relationship with their dad. I think that this book is going to be really, really a bestseller because people are curious about everything. They're curious about his relationship with Whitney. They're curious about the relationship with Whitney's family. They're curious about, the story with Bobby Christina and Nick Gordon. So I will probably read it because again, I'm curious too. But I just wish there was a more respectful way that he could have displayed the relationship between his ex-wife Whitney Houston and his daughter, because the part where he talks about all three of them smoking marijuana together, if that is truly in the book, I think I would have left that out. Can you guys imagine? So he's basically saying, yeah, we were all in the limousine, me, Whitney, and Bobby Christina, and we were smoking, a joint or weed with each other. Whatever goes on between a family behind closed doors or in a limo with tinted windows, that part, he could have left out. I think he could have said something like this. We did things and we allowed Bobby Christina to do things that now when I look back, maybe we shouldn't have done it. And it would have left people to kind of wonder what those things were. And I think if he would have done it that way, this segment of the population that still hates him and blames him for everything that happened to Whitney, I think it would have brought them around. I think it would have redeemed Bobby in their eyes if he would have softened just a little bit the way that he says it. Like I said, I believe he has the right to say it, whatever happened, but there's a different way to say it. He could have alluded to it, to some of the things that happened. That's just my opinion. I just want this to come to some kind of end. All this pain between these two families is just really, really sad, and I don't think this book is gonna do that, y'all. I don't. If what they're saying he's included in it, I think Whitney's family is going to be pissed. So thank you for just clicking on the video, and I welcome all comments and just let's get in there and talk about this. And I'm just wondering if any of you guys have gotten the book or if you're gonna read it. And they say it's pretty long. It's like almost 325 pages. So Bobby wasn't playing. He's telling this story. So again, thank you for clicking on the video, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye now.